so here's a question. How important is it to you to have a full screen display? I'm talking about like a panel from the top to the bottom of your phone, no bezel to be found. Well, last year, Oppo and Vivo kind of tried to do this. They hid the selfie camera in this little moving parts module in the top of the phones, which kind of enabled a bigger screen than we've previously seen in a lot of devices. And now it's 2019, and a lot of manufacturers are trying to do a similar thing. They're drilling holes in the display to make room for the selfie camera. But Vivo doesn't want to do this, and they kind of want to still go with this whole full screen display idea with like nothing intersecting it. So now what they've come up with is a phone with two screens. This is the Vivo Nex Dual Display Edition. All right, so this one is really interesting. I don't really want to talk about specs that much here because a lot of the specs are pretty much the same as other flagships. I'll just give a quick rundown. It's got a Qualcomm Snapdragon 845, it's got 128 gigabytes of storage, and it has 10 gigabytes of RAM. And 10 gigabytes of RAM is a lot of RAM. There's a few phones on the market right now that have 10 gigs of RAM, and currently that's pretty pointless. But I think it's nice that they're actually putting that in here because that kind of adds a sense of longevity to your purchase. And maybe down the road, Android will actually be able to take advantage of 10 gigabytes of RAM. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but it's nice to just have that if you need it. And the performance on these specs is, as you would assume, really, really good. I didn't see any frame dropping or stuttering pretty much throughout my entire time with the phone. And it actually performed really well in our benchmark tests too. If you want to check those out, you can check them out in the article below. So yes, it's pretty much like every other flagship in 2018 as far as performance goes. But what makes this phone really interesting is the two screens. So on the front, you've got this huge AMOLED display. It looks really, really nice. It looks pretty much the same as the Vivo Nex from last year. But then you turn the phone around and on the back, you've got a second display, which is still fully capable. And you have to wonder, what is that there for? So the main focus of the secondary display is going to be the camera. Vivo kind of thought, well, the rear cameras on smartphones are already better than the selfie cameras on most smartphones anyway. So why don't we just repurpose the rear cameras to be able to shoot your selfies? And that makes a lot of sense. The only thing that was holding people back from doing that was being able to see themselves when they were taking their photo. And I think this is a really interesting implementation, but it would kind of suck if that was the only reason this thing had a secondary display, right? So Vivo probably thought that through too, and they introduced a few new things that you can actually do with the second display so it isn't just about taking selfies. The first one is to be able to take pictures of people and let them see the photo that you're taking of them before you actually take the shot. And this is really nice because if someone wanted to pose or just like put a photo up on their Instagram, you can hand your phone to someone and then you can actually see the photo before they take it, which is a really nice feature. The other main use for the second display is for gaming. So if you were in a first-person shooter like PUBG, they specifically partnered with Tencent on PUBG, you can actually use this back display as kind of like a trigger. So if you're using your thumbs to run around and aim, you can actually tap on the back of the phone to shoot, and that just gives you a little more leverage, makes it a little easier to play the game. I'm sure there's a bunch of other things that you could probably use the second display for. When I first got the phone, I thought, oh no, like what if I drop it and break the second screen? But if you think about it, most phones are glass now anyway, and just having a second display lets you use the other display if you do break one of the screens. So you still will have a usable phone even if you crack one of your displays, which is actually pretty useful. So this thing has a 3,500 milliamp hour battery, and you're probably thinking, oh no, battery life is gonna be so bad, two screens, half the battery life. And that's not really the case, because if you think about it, you only use one screen at a time. And most of the time I'm using the main display. There's very, very few times when I'm actually using both displays, only really in like mirror mode in the camera. But the battery life was actually pretty good. For some reason, FunTouch OS does not report screen on time, which is really frustrating for me. But I ended the day with about 25 to 30% battery life left, which is a lot better than some of the other phones I've been using recently. So just keep that in mind. And if there's only one set of cameras on this phone, you'd hope that they would be good, right? And I'm kind of mixed on it. I really like the color profile. I think it's very similar to the Xiaomi Mi 8. It's a little more desaturated and more natural than a lot of other flagship phones like a Samsung camera, but the clarity and sharpness just isn't there. I was really impressed with the Mi 8's camera, and if this was just a little bit sharper, I think that it would be really similar to that camera. One kind of cool thing about this camera though is the built-in ring light. So say you were taking a selfie and you just wanted to light up your face a little bit more, there's two bright white LEDs on either side of this camera that give your face a really nice even exposure and just give that sensor a lot more light overall. And when you're charging your phone or you get notifications, there's actually RGB LEDs that can light around the camera sensor that just give it this really nice effect. So obviously it doesn't actually change the performance of the phone, but I just thought it was a little cool thing that kind of adds a little value to the device. The Vivo Nex Dual Display Edition is running on FunTouch OS 4.5, which is based on Android 9.0 Pie. And in my opinion, it's bad. It's definitely not made for Western audiences. It's trying to look a lot like iOS, which is pretty popular with Chinese ROMs, and I just really don't dig it. It doesn't allow you to have an app drawer, which is really frustrating for me, and it forces you to put all your apps in folders on the home screen, which is just so annoying. But the nice thing is that it does have some good navigation gestures. They are really similar to iOS's, but I'm not really a fan of the default Pie navigation gestures anyway, and I think these are a little bit better. Overall, I think if you like how iOS looks and works, then you might like this, but I would really suggest just throwing a launcher like Nova on it. Nova actually works really well. I did test it on this phone, and you can also use it on both displays, so it doesn't actually mess up any of the system navigation. So you might be thinking, without a selfie camera, how am I gonna do things like face unlock or other types of authentication that aren't just putting a pin in? And Vivo has put another in-screen fingerprint reader in this phone, just like the original Nex, and it's definitely better than the original Nex 2. It's faster, it's more effective, and I really didn't have trouble getting into my phone. If you want to turn on the rear display though, there is a time of flight sensor next to the regular camera, which basically projects dots onto your face and creates a map of your face so that you can get into your phone. It's really similar to like Face ID or some of the other technology that we've seen from people like Xiaomi. So you can actually buy this phone right now in China. It is 4,998 RMB, which translates to about $730 or like 630 euros. I honestly think that's a pretty good price for what you're getting. You're getting really good specs, but really, honestly, you're just getting a phone that is very, very unique. You've got two displays, you've got a headphone jack, which you don't get in a lot of phones right now, and it's just gonna look completely different from all the other phones in all your friends' pockets. A couple weird little things to note here. I use Google Fi and T-Mobile for my data pretty much on all my review devices, and this is the international version of the phone, so it should work with that. I kind of checked the bands and made sure that it should work with those services, but for some reason, I can get no more than 2G edge data on this phone. So I reached out to Vivo, I asked them what's up, and they said they would get me a response as soon as they can. So make sure you check the article in the next few days. I'll definitely be updating that to let you know what kind of networks this is actually gonna work on. But overall, I think this is a really interesting and innovative device. We haven't really seen a smartphone besides the Nubia X that has a screen on both sides of the phone. And I really like that Vivo just kind of goes out on a limb and tries wild ideas and actually makes them products, doesn't just make them tech demos. So you can actually go buy this right now, which I think is really cool. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. If you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the comment section below. You can go check out the full review on our website where I've detailed a lot of things. We have image samples, we have benchmarks, so all of that stuff is right there. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video.